And it looks to be quiet. I'm not seeing the hand, so I don't know if the hand comes out when somebody starts typing or not, but I'm sensing quiet.
No, uh, just one comment from a student out there that
Mhm.
if you could show the chart a little more often than the page with the
Sure,
talking points, just so that they can
sure.
read it into the chart a little bit. I think
Yep,
that's a fair comment, but
yep,
it's all
yep.
good, and I don't see any other raised hands on the board other than that one comment, Kim.
Okay. Yeah, I can easily go back and forth and do that. So here we have Saturn in Sagittarius transiting through the 10th house. And as you can see, we're going to have an interchangeable archetype with Saturn transiting through its own house, the 10th house. Oh, and I've been forgetting. In this case, we're going to have the passive polarity, we're going to have cardinal modality, and the element of Earth. Okay. And so you can see how this starts to bring a stronger Saturn influence when it's moving through its own house. It too, though, will be, oh, here's the charts. All right, now go back and forth to them. Here's Saturn in the 10th. Here's how it's going to make the waning semi-squares to Pluto Cap in the 11th. Waning sesqui-squadrates to Uranus in Aries in the 2nd. And then we'll have the grand trine in fire in the earth houses. Okay, all right. And so, uh, just like Saturn transiting ninth house Sag, all of the above. Everything that we have been speaking about here during these Saturn classes is going to be activated with Saturn Sag 10th house. Saturn might try to be a little more controlling here because we're blending Sag in 10th house. However, all of these Sagittarian archetypes are still going to be valid in regards to what we've been speaking about. With this transit, there is a need to get real with career and self-responsibility. We're really going to have to have a sense of focus on a sense of focus in life. Again, that 10th house self-determination, self-responsibility, taking charge of your world, and doing it from a right brain, intuitive level with Sag. And if there are things in our world that no longer function for us, that no longer make sense, we need to let them go. Leroy and I have this is my house transit with Saturn. And over the course of this winter, we decided to clean out my office. Back in the heydays of Pluto and Sag, I had a full-time assistant. Everything is so much in the cloud now. Everything has gone so digitized now. I no longer have that assistant. We finally cleaned out one half of my office, moved Leroy into it, and turned his office back into our exercise area. And so I've been letting go of old paperwork. I've been sorting through things and just, nope, don't need that, don't need that, don't need that. And so now I'm getting now I know where I got the idea and said I'm going to change this. Leroy didn't get much choice about moving his office. I says, I'm doing this, honey. This is just what's happening. And I think he likes it now that we've done it. He's got a lot more room and space. He's not in a cold corner anymore. There can be familial lessons that you have to go through when Saturn is transiting through the 10th house. What's your responsibility? What's happening for you? What we have going on, and excuse me for giving another example with my life again, thank you for letting me do that, is I've had the loss of 3 aunts over the last I think it was in 13 months I lost 3 aunts, both my mom and dad's side of the family, and had to release my cat, my beloved 15-year-old black and white cat. I and then I had a brother-in-law that got in a car accident, and serious accident, and he walked away with just 6 stitches on the side of his head, lucky. But what it did is it started this whole process with my mom and dad of opening up to us. We've known on broad levels, retired farmers, land, and a trust with it, and we've known that us 3 girls, and the oldest of 3 would take over it. But all of a sudden, now my folks are like, here's this paperwork, here's that paperwork, here's how much they're starting to go into all of these details about the family estate. And so here I am, working with Leroy on taking on the responsibility of all this. And so not waiting until something happens to know where the will is, where the trust papers are, where blah, 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 blah. And so that's my example of Saturn in the 10th house is the shift of my parents opening up to all 3 of us, but as the eldest daughter, they're really making sure that I'm in the loop on all kinds of stuff. And so there's the responsibility factor that's coming through. So there's 2 examples for you. The letting goes I've been having to do with paperwork in the office and the family members. There's also with this transit the evolution of security, because Saturn 10th going to want to have that outer control and that polarity. 4th house, there has to be an evolution of inner security and being okay in your world, feeling a sense of security, deepening for yourself. Now, Pluto Capricorn in the 11th, and here, let me go back to you. Here's the waning semi-squares with Pluto Capricorn in the 11th. I actually have Pluto in the 12th already, but we're going to, purposes here, we're going to look at it this way, okay? Here you can have old work traumas come up. Pluto's in Capricorn, Saturn's in the 10th house. So you can, again, old work traumas, old familial responsibilities, and any traumas around that can open up for you, and you've got to make an effort to be able to detach from circumstances, Capricorn, and take an objective look at everything and what makes sense. And if something doesn't, let it go. Make the change. 11th house signature here with Pluto, there's going to be that need to have some liberation from trauma, liberation from responsibilities if it presents itself as what is necessary. Sometimes that detachment with this Pluto Cap signature is going to say, oh, this is your responsibility, and you're not going to be able to, Sag, avoid it anymore. Saturn, suppress it, ignore it. No, you have to take on the responsibility. So it can go either way. There's a need to find a higher purpose to life. This is the Sag coming in with all of this, because sometimes when Pluto's transiting the 11th house, it brings an acceleration process of change and metamorphosis, but there also then is that tendency to want to be stuck in order to feel secure. And when we can sense the larger purpose to things, it makes it easier to make the changes that are necessary. There can, of course, be creative inspirations here with 11th house polarity to the 5th, wanting to put that into practice however necessary, however it is perceived to be best to do so. And, of course, the famous reality checks. Pluto's in Capricorn. Saturn's in the 10th. And the Saturn Sag can, just want the, I want all the glory, but I don't want to do any of the work, so to speak, sometimes. And so there can be the reality checks that come around with that. Now, with Uranus, Aries, here is the waning sesquisquadrate, okay, the waning square and a half, Saturn to Uranus, Aries in the 2nd house. Here we're going to have the evolution of our values around resources, the evolution of career values, 10th to 2nd. And even though by sign it looks like trines, Saturn is in process of going through 3 of these waning sesquisquadrates to Uranus and Aries. We had the first one in November, December, and the next 2 will come later this summer. And so there's a lot of crises to evolve value systems in these areas. We could have that good old alienation, especially from our social position, Saturn 10th, and its purpose then is going to have us deepening our self-reliance, deepening our sense of self, deepening our ability to know that we can survive and we can flourish beyond survival. We can take care of ourselves. So there could be the whole effect of self-determination that's going to be in process here, because while Uranus is in Aries, it's in the 2nd house here. And so there can be some inertia that counterbalances that Arian energy. And so the waning sesquisquadrate may be the crises to act, to move, to take charge of one's life, to be in the world, be real in the world, to pay attention to our physical world, earth houses, rather than the fire signs just running around it. Now here's the grand trine, okay? Jupiter is in Leo in the 6th, Saturn, Sag 10th, Uranus, Aries 2nd. So we're mixing fire and earth. So what we have is the ability to achieve goals, physical manifestations to any degree that we're willing to make the effort. Now, that doesn't mean that we won't evolve our goals. We definitely could see with the fire signs and earth houses the evolution of what is important to us. There may need to be a balancing out between workaholism or laziness. What we could have going on here, we could have all the excitability of the fire energy and just really getting into overworking. Got to do this, got to do that, got to do this, got to do that. And sometimes we're just going to have to be able to rest, earth houses, and take a little break. We have to balance out the working. And if we're going to get into the laziness of the trine, we can have the fire signs with all the ideas, but there's never any effort made. And then we're going to fall into the distortions of all of the materialization of the work, the career, the resources. Then they could just dissipate, or we could lose things. If we go into, lessons of excess with the resources, if we go into getting overexcited and overspending, we could wake up and surprise ourselves with debt. We could, again, lose things that have manifested because we're not making the effort in achieving or earning, anything on that manifested plane. So you could, again, extremes of workaholism, but the extremes of laziness and inertia, and I don't want to do anything. The ideas are all here, but I just don't know if I can make the effort. I think somebody just wants to go play, could be the situation. And again, these are not absolutes. You just need to play with this and see how this works in an actual life. And so here is the Saturn 10th house transit with the last quarter squares to Chiron, Neptune in Pisces, first house. Here is Jupiter Virgo 7th, last quarter square Saturn in the 10th. And of course, when Saturn is squaring the nodes, that can happen right here in the first 7th. And so looking at Saturn's last quarter squares to Neptune and Chiron, there can be a loss of identity with this first house, and there could be a loss of the social positions, 10th house, going on. Who am I? And it can just be, there's a loss of meaning. Maybe we have a social position out there in the world, and it doesn't satisfy us anymore. It doesn't make sense to us anymore. So we have to have a real deepening and evolving sense of ourself. And so we may have these isolation and alienation lessons to deepen up a relationship with ourself. Saturn, Sag, 10th house, again, we could have all kinds of responsibilities with our family, with work, perhaps with social positions, and we just want to run away and escape. I need to rest. Pisces, with myself, first house. Sometimes the isolation, alienation is because we have to recognize we're more than our outer position in the world. We're more than resources that we have accumulated in our world. And if we buying into false sense of self, this can happen right here. That ability of not being able to look deeply at self. We, could have the letdowns with our world making sense because we've got to learn to get into the truth and honesty and authenticity of who we really are. Now, Jupiter making the last quarter squares to Saturn. This is going to be an ability to really look at our relating patterns. 7th house is compare and contrast with others. And Jupiter's going to be looking at that and going, what's working, what's not working. Jupiter in this spot right here in the 7th house, whoops, sorry, I'm going the wrong direction. Jupiter could be over-sacrificing itself in relationships. Doing too much for the other, giving too much for the other. That Virgo energy that just can be into atonement or woundedness, and so we can overdo the giving and then we get angry. This is where this T-square will start to operate with these 3 planets. And so Jupiter here is going to have to take on responsibility for healthy boundaries in giving and receiving. The other potential that could happen here is you could really see some relationship healings come through. There could be efforts to improve self-improvement with the partner, perhaps learning how to be devotional to the partner in healthy ways, in healing ways. But definitely learning to have healthy boundaries. And both parties learning to have self-responsibility. Jupiter 7th house square to the 10th house Saturn. Possible the partner could have health issues going on. Jupiter Virgo, whoops, I keep going the wrong way. Jupiter Virgo in the 7th house here. Now, here's Saturn square the nodes. It'll be a lot of these same archetypes that we were just speaking to. We could have responsibility struggles. Again, doing too much or doing too little. We're going to have to look at lessons between ourselves and others and balancing that out. Healthy boundaries. Okay? In other words, Saturn up here, it's going to have to balance between us and others. It's going to have to balance out the giving and the receiving. Someone could fall on a too selfish end, first house, play the victim to control and be selfish and distortions. This could, again, the overgiving could happen here with this Saturn square the nodes. So there's going to have to be healthy boundaries between self and others. There's going to have to be both parties learning how to be self-responsible in their world, however they need to. Sometimes we're going to need to make more of an effort, and yep, the